This is Umar Ahmed for IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. I'm with the main man, Gareth A. Davies, nearly 24 hours on from a spectacular knockout victory for Tyson Fury. Obviously, we had our hearts and our mouths all at one point in round 4. But yeah, just sum it up for me, Gareth.
Well, it's one of the most extraordinary fights, Umar, that I've ever witnessed in a very long time, coming to Las Vegas, a few decades. It had everything. It wasn't an elite boxing match. For me, it was a wild, roughhouse brawl. Wilder made the adjustments, looked good early on, arguably won the first round, but arguably maybe a couple. But Fury did his thing. Wilder was too heavy in the end. Fury did his thing, got into Wilder, had him down in the third. When he hit him big, he wobbled the big man from Alabama, the Alabama slammer anyway. But the fact that he was down twice in the 4th round really created the drama. It had everything. It had a classic heavyweight feel about it. It was a classic encounter. And it will be remembered for a very long time. As I say, not because it was an amazing boxing match, but just the drama involved. Wilder down twice, Fury down twice, and then the way Fury finished it and depleted the tank of Deontay Wilder. How Wilder went out on his shield and showed there was no quitting him till he was hit by that big right hand and he bounced off the ropes and flat and out in the middle, at the center of the ring. How the crowd were won over by Fury. It was a 60-40 Wilder crowd, I think. 15,000 people in there. Obviously, the Brits couldn't travel because of President Joe Biden not allowing the Brits into November the 1st. What a shame that was. Even Bob Arum said to me, it sucks. He said that there weren't 8,000 Brits. Where's the atmosphere with the Brits? It sucks, as he said. And he's right. He was honest. We didn't get that raucous feel that Fury loves and that we all love, that we know the British fans are extraordinary at creating. So all these surreal things, the build-up all week with no crowds at the weigh-in and the press conference. So when we had this dramatic fight, which Wilder was still dangerous towards the end, even with that right hand, Fury was reckless at times, wasn't using his jab enough, could have made it easier on himself. But I think from 7-8 rounds onwards, when he started kind of putting his gloves, getting his shorts right, he was measuring himself, wasn't he, to hit Wilder with big shots. Both men come out with massive credit. It's the era of the Gypsy King. There's no question about it. He is the heavyweight. I thought that before anyway. You know, it's well documented. Proved it last night in that third fight against a Wilder who would not go away. Wilder's stock rose last night as well, Umar. You know, where people say, where does he go now? But there's great fights out there for him if he still wants them. And does Fury still fights? He's undefeated. 2-time heavyweight champion of the world. He defended his belt now. And you know, we all see him in against White and Joshua and Usyk maybe. But, you know, I personally think he's just head and shoulders above them. Usyk's an interesting fight. But you know, it's a brilliant place to be last night in that ring, in that arena by the ring. And everyone who was there will never forget it. I guarantee. The buzz afterwards was extraordinary.
Of this era that you're referring to, surely he has done it all now. He went to Germany and beat Klitschko, and he's gone to America and on paper, beaten Wilder twice and drew one, but in many people's eyes, beaten him 3 times, all on away territory. Yeah,
I mean, look, he's the road traveller, the Gypsy King traveller, isn't he, at the end of the day? And he always jokes about that, of course. And that he is. He's a road warrior. He's had his ups and downs. He's come to America and captured public imagination here in the way that I witnessed Manny Pacquiao do over 20 years, by the way. And if Tyson stays here and has his career here the whole time, he'll always be loved by that group of people in the UK. He'll always be never forgiven for some of the things he said in the UK 5-6 years ago when he was a young man of 27. He redefined the era by taking torch off Klitschko, who dominated for 9.5 years. And he's he hasn't just carried on and won the belt. He went into the wilderness. It's that loss of 140 pounds in weight, the being an advocate for mental health, but being open and honest and wanting to talk about it, helping other people. He has thousands of DMs, by the way, from people who say how he's inspired them and how he's changed their lives. And, you know, I often talk about this with him when I'm with him as well, and what it means to him. And, you know, it's why he's able to speak about these things so publicly.
Yeah. We'll come on to that in a second, Gareth, but just on the fight itself, I've spoken to a few trainers today, Dominic Ingle, Jamie Moore, Ben Davison, and they've said that forget what happened last time. Obviously, we know Malik Scott was very unlikely to throw the towel in because Breland did that last time and got the sack. So, but they were saying that there were moments in that fight where they felt like they would have thrown the towel in to save their fighter. What do you think about that?
Well, I think up until around 7, 8, Wilder was still getting through with the right hand. But then after that, you could see that he was fatiguing and he was depleting, and Fury was measuring him. In fact, I felt he needed to get him out of there. I thought the fight was about the end of the 8th. I remember saying, I was doing the Talk Sport broadcast at the time, as well as doing a bit of tapping out, and I remember saying to the guys, I think Fury will finish him by 7 or certainly by the end of 8, because he was so wobbly. But yeah, I mean, in the corner, by the way, the doctor came and had a look at, I think, at the end of round 9 and the end of round 10. But Wilder wanted to go out on the shield. He went to hospital last night. Shelley Finkel reports, his co-manager reports, that he is okay. But in a weird way, he wanted that moment. He wanted to go out as a warrior, because we got to that position in the 7th round in the last fight. I appreciate trainers saying that, because they love their boxers they work with like sons, like family. But as long as there's no lasting damage, I mean, it was a big knockout at the end. He stood over him like that picture behind you a little bit, believe it or not.
Yeah.
He kind of mirroring that picture. It looks like that picture from the corner with Wilder down and Fury over him. But, you know, at least it was emphatic. We had an emphatic, decisive finish.
But Gareth, just to pause on that point, can't the effects, the damage sometimes not show up straight away and they can come later on in life?
Of course, I'm not denying that. It's an inherently dangerous sport. But when you're 19 going into the army or the services and you have fearless, your body feels extraordinary. You don't know it's ever in a week, and you're going to get older. You're going to go through things. You'll suffer trauma physically. When you're younger and you ride fast motorbikes, when you go out and you have you haven't got children to worry about, your grandchildren to worry. As you get older, you have more of an appreciation for these things. Listen, 35 years old. He kept fighting there. The will was in him. It's up to him how he wants to live his life. It's up to him how he wants to die in his life. And I'm not being over dramatic with that. These guys it's not normal to fight. That's why it's so amazing to be around these human beings, these two giant human beings who compartmentalize their fear and their nerves and their anxieties, all those things that we all have, the depression, you know, the mental health, for this moment of electricity and energy and adrenaline and preparing for this moment. It's in certain people to be warriors. It's been time immemorial, it's been like that. And it goes down to basic survival in the DNA. And it's a deep calling for these guys. And I believe in Bronze Bomber's deep calling. And yes, he may suffer later in life, but there's loads of guys who haven't and have been through wars as well. Of course, we have to be careful. Of course, it's inherently dangerous. Of course, he's disappointed right now. Of course, he couldn't have a hug with Tyson Fury yet. Down the line, these two guys will grow closer as they become older men. I'm sure of it. Tyson Fury likes the guy. Wilder has to accept he got defeated. Has to maybe climb down and say, you didn't cheat. I know it's a long answer. Maybe you didn't cheat, and I had it to build myself mentally. I would love to see respect between the two guys eventually, but you've got to allow Wilder to be what he wants to be. He told his corner this time, "You are not pulling me out. I'm sure of it."
Well, yeah. Look at
What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?
Well, I don't think you could blame some trainers for throwing in the towel at that point. But if Wilder had the conversation before the fight with Malik Scott saying, "At no point do you throw the towel in,"
Well,
then you
I
can't.
don't know if it was as specific as that, but he made it patently clear after round 7 in the last fight. He wasn't joking. He meant it. He was disappointed. He's carried that disappointment for 20 months. It's up. Yes, we have to think about the safety of fighters. He called it his defining moment. So he wants to give everything. He was amazing last night. He made the fight. He wouldn't go away. He kept coming back. His tensile strength had gone when he was landing some of his punches later in the fight. But he still could have turned it around. Maybe not at 10 and 11, but 7, 8, 9 certainly. 7, 8, 9 certainly.
Just to go back to the point about these guys one day hopefully being friends and having respect for each other. Obviously, we've seen it with Ali Fraser. We've seen it with Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson. Who would have thought they would have been on a chat show together? So hopefully one day we see Tyson and Deontay on an American chat show and talking about their trilogy.
Well, hopefully we see them sitting with you and I.
Well, that would be a dream, wouldn't it?
You don't need them on a chat show. They can sit with you and I and chat. No, it'd be amazing. Listen, Joe Frazier never forgave Ali, you remember? I remember interviewing Joe not long when Joe, before Ali died and before Joe died, I did an interview with Joe and he said he's never forgiving it. I remember the quote from him. He said, you know, we might have had all these rows and we've had great fights and people love them, but I know which one of us is going to heaven and which one's going to hell. And he meant it. He meant that Ali was going to hell. He never really forgave him. He didn't. He had a thing about it, you know. But rather like Tyson Fury will say to Wilder, I'm sure, when I call you a big dosser and the shit house and all this stuff, it's going up for a fight, isn't it? Yeah. I don't think he really dislikes him as a man. I don't think he really does. He won't be happy that Wilder's called him a cheat and all these things. But when the dust settles, I do hope they can have a friendship and a respect for each other because they delivered for us over those 3 fights. An extraordinary 3-year narrative of their lives as well. They'll be forever linked, like Ali and Frazier are, forever linked.
Definitely. All right, Gareth, just to close off, just want to address something. So I know you've come under a little bit of criticism for a couple of questions you asked at a post-fight press conference last night. Do you want to just take the floor and explain to people what the questions were and explain your reasoning for why you asked them?
Well, I asked Tyson Fury about whether it was time for retirement. I've had these chats with him before. And people think it's strange that I'm asking him about retirement. And I also asked him about mental health as well and depression. And I kind of asked them both together. So it came across, I don't think it came across as I really intended it, actually. And I think that's why perhaps people have reacted like they haven't. To explain it, I asked him about retirement because I think he's done it all. Ended the era of Klitschko, came back, beat Wilder. Yes, you can have fights with Usyk, Fury, and Joshua and Dillian White. They're the fights out there, frankly. They're the big fights because I don't take big fights now. Or maybe Otto Wallin, if Otto Wallin beats Dillian White for the WBC interim title, and then it's obviously a rematch with Wallin and cuts and all those things. So that makes a drama as well. And also I asked him about, he's become an advocate for mental health. I've spoken to him an awful lot, and I'll reveal this. I was in contact with him when he wasn't well years ago, and used to send him messages and say, nothing to do with work. If you need to talk to him at 2, 3 in the morning, I'm not often up padding about. If you've no to speak to, please ring me. And that offer was open to him because I went and worked with him before he beat Klitschko, and I went to see him in Marbella when he weighed 27 stone, and I did care about the guy, you know. I've been along telling the story of his life, you know. I know all his family and all those things, you know, because you do it yourself. And they give us extraordinary access. And what I meant by that was, Tyson told me in the last few weeks that he goes into the lowest of lows after the highest highs very often. And all I was trying to really do with the question was ask him, after such an amazing performance, do you think you'll go into a depression this time? And it didn't come out very well, if I'm honest. Normally words come out well with me, but it didn't. And I think the way I broached it, people felt like it was grating to them. But Tyson understood what I meant, because I saw him an hour and a half later. I went to the after party, yeah? And I sat with him, and he said specifically to me, even after the press conference, "You're very welcome at my after party. There's the after party." And 2 stamps you had to get through different security.
What, have you just come home?
Well, I've had a sleep. I've had a little sleep, and then I got on with some work. Yeah, I've done a few other things, BBC News and Talk Sport and blah blah blah. But you're the most important one.
Thank you.
And get this, I broached the question in the wrong way. Definitely, I didn't get the words out right. He knows exactly what I meant, and I was just trying to allow him to advocate for it, because Paris will be close with him, his family will be close around him, because they know what he goes through now, and that support mechanism will be there for him. And I was with him, and I went into the corner where he was sitting with himself with his shirt off, and with Paris in the corner of Hakkasan at the MGM Grand. And we hugged it out. You know, it's been a great week. It's been a great 20 months, you know, in lots of ways. Things have gone right for him, you know, with the victory and the ways presented himself, all those things. And he said to me, "I get your question about retirement." And you know, we were leaning right into each other's ears. And he said, "It's a great question," he said, "because what have I got left to prove? I have nothing left to prove. I get your question." He said, "I could walk away now if I want to." And that's all I was inferring with that question. As for the mental health thing, look, I care about the guy. I've had mental health issues myself over the last few years. And I know so many more people do. If it offended anyone, I apologize. I didn't mean to offend anyone. It didn't offend him. He would have spoken to me afterwards if it had offended him. What I do think is amazing in this issue is how someone, what's really powerful. I met a few people this week who told me the stories of how Tyson Fury inspired them. What I think is extraordinary, I remember when Ben Davison was Tyson's trainer and doing his social media, Ben pulled me aside one day and said, you would not believe, I've been looking after his social media in the last week before the fight, because, you know, they don't like him looking at his stuff specifically. The thousands, if not tens of thousands of messages from people that are inspired by his story. And I do not apologize for getting him to talk about it, because it's a massive conduit. It's a massive help to so many people. His story is one of the great sports narratives and survival and regeneration and regrowth stories. You know, in our society, there's loads of them out there. But Fury, I know, sorry, I'm going to stop. But Fury is one of the big ones as well. I mean, and I will never apologize for putting that out about him and talking about mental health with him, because he wants to be an advocate as well. Because he knows, big, rough traveller man, the Gypsy King, heavyweight champion of the world, if he can talk about those things, then it allows anybody to talk about it.
Well put and well summed up. That clears that one up. Gareth, appreciate your time on IFL TV. Get back to the UK safe, and I'm sure we will speak soon on the channel, okay?
Always a pleasure. Cheers, bud.
Thank you, Gareth.